Welcome, everybody. My name is Katie Warren. I'm with the Washington State Association of Head Start and ECAP, and we are delighted to host today our partners from Centralia College and Maricela Rodriguez, who's on our own parent ambassador staff, to do a great webinar about cultural humility. Fatima and Alejandro are from Centralia College, and they and Maricela have done a lot of thinking about culture and the way that we work with families in Head Start and ECAP and Early Head Start. And I am delighted that they're here. We will share the PowerPoint out to folks who have registered for this call. So this will be available, and we are recording. So this will be available to you guys.
Do you guys hear me?
After we get it up and running. So, all right, guys, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Do you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. I just want to share with you guys that we are not experts. We are just going to share this from our own experiences. My name is Maricela Rodriguez. I was born and I lived in Monterrey is the city, Nuevo León is the state, and the country is Mexico. So I lived there until I immigrated to the United States, and that happened 16 years ago. So to get started, I would like to invite you all to grab a piece of paper, please, and a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil or a marker, something that you have there, or just be creative. We are going to do an activity, but please don't show anything. Don't write anything on the chat box.
Maricela, your voice is gone, so gonna continue. I think Maricela audio is, she hasn't noticed that she's not, we can hear her. So everybody get a piece of paper.
There, and later on, we are going to ask you to share. So please, and having said that, I'm going to pass it to Alejandro.
So Maricela, if you could repeat what they're supposed to do with that piece of paper, because you cut out halfway through the explanation, please.
Alejandro, you can repeat it.
Okay.
I think her voice.
So with that piece of paper, I will give a short, brief explanation. So if people could write one word on that piece of paper that you have, the people that have called you before, or that a word that you feel that diminishes who you are. That word could be something that affects your personality, affects who you are. Okay. As we wrap that up, I'm going to move into our presentation, and I'm going to do a short introduction about who I am. So my name is Alejandro. I am a U.S. citizen. I was born and raised here in Washington State, but both of my parents immigrated from Tulancingo, Hidalgo, which is a state in the beautiful country of Mexico. And I will begin the presentation with going over a couple of terms that are widely used when working with undocumented/immigrant families. As a reminder, we are not experts. We are just speaking on the knowledge we have gained from working with immigrant and undocumented families. Let's see. Okay. So the first term that I'm going to talk about is an immigrant. So an immigrant is a person who comes to any foreign country to live there permanently. An example of an immigrant is everyone that came on the Mayflower to live here in the United States. Those were all considered immigrant because they came from a foreign country to live here permanently. And then the next term on this slide is a resident. So a resident is a person who lives somewhere permanently or on a long-term basis. So an example for this is people who live here in Washington State. To be considered a resident, you have to live here for 12 years. 12 months, which is considered a year. For me to make it a lot easier, I think about when college students move to different states, a lot of the time they like to figure out how long they have to become a resident of that state so that they can qualify as a resident to pay the tuition. Another term is lawful permanent resident, which refers to a person whom the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services has granted permission to permanently reside in the U.S. An example for this is someone who has gone through the legal system and has been granted a green card. So usually those are the people that are called green card holders, which over a period of time can then apply to become a U.S. citizen. So now, when people hear the term undocumented, an undocumented person is a foreign person who doesn't have a legal right to be or remain in the United States. So an example for this one is, this could qualify as anyone that is crossing any of the US borders or crossing any border that any country has. So those people are considered undocumented because they don't have the required paperwork to be in that country, but also they haven't been granted permission to be in that country. So a refugee is a person outside his or her country of nationality who is unable or unwilling to return to his or her country of nationality because of persecution or a well-founded fear of persecution on account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. An example that comes to mind for this one is currently a lot of people are fleeing the country of Guatemala, which is located in Central America, due to all the violence that is currently going on in their country. Temporary protected status is, or also known as TPS, is granted to foreign countries that are unable to temporarily accept back their nationals due to ongoing civil war, environmental disaster, or any other extraordinary condition. And as you guys can see from the background that is used on this slide, these are a couple of the countries that the United States currently has temporary protection status orders or agreements with. The final term that I am going to speak about is asylum seekers. So an asylum seeker is a person seeking protection because they have suffered persecution or fear that they have suffered persecution due to race, religion, nationality, social group, or because of their political opinion. When reading this definition or looking at this definition, it kind of sounds like the definition of a refugee. One of the main differences is that to be considered as an asylum seeker, you have to fit the definition of a refugee. Also, asylum seekers can be people who are currently living here in the United States or waiting at one of the point of entries of border. And like I mentioned, we are not experts, and my computer is locking me out.
So for this part, if you need any legal advice or advice is to call the Northwest Immigration Project. They do have everything that you might need to know. Another good resource for any of those legal issues is that One America. And Alejandro was trying to type the websites for those, but as we go on the presentation, we can give you those two resources. And Maricela, go ahead and do your part now.
The next part is the DACA. Fatima is DACA.
Katie, Alejandro's having difficulties. You think you can take over the slides? I'm so sorry, guys. Now you know why we keep saying we are not experts.
Fatima, we
Yeah,
can't hear
sorry.
you.
I'm just trying to open that email. I just didn't have it open because all right, enable and.
The three of us are having really bad connection.
I think it's because everybody's using Zoom. Zoom is a very popular platform to use. So as we find the DACA, two more, please. One. Yeah. Okay, so let me just do a presentation of myself. I'm an immigrant myself. I immigrated from Mexico about 27 years ago. The reason I don't think it matters sometimes at this point, but I'm here, and I was born and raised in Veracruz State, and it's part of Mexico. It's by the coast. If you're familiar with the Gulf of Mexico, you will find my beautiful state of Mexico, which is prettier than Hidalgo, which Alejandro's parents are from, and prettier than Monterrey, where Maricela is from. So just wanna give you a little bit of background of the DACA. The DREAM Act is a piece of legislation first introduced to the Congress in 2001. So it has been about 19 years ago since this was presented to us. President Obama in that time was trying to create a path to citizenship to young people who were brought to the United States as a children without documentation. These are young people who are American in every way, except on papers. They have grown up in this country and consider themselves to be American, but they have a lack of documentation to fully engage in society. After Congress failed to pass the DREAM Act in 2010, the Obama administration on June 15, 2012 announced a temporary program allowing dreamers to come forward, pass a background check, and apply for a work permit. The program is called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, as we know, DACA, and allow applicants to request consideration of referred action for a period of 2 years, subject to renewal. The referred action doesn't provide lawful status. What that means is the DACA recipients can work with a work permit, but they are not legal residents. They can reside in the United States, but they don't have any, they cannot apply, they can vote, they don't have the same rights as a legal resident. They can get a license, they can get a work permit, and they can get all other little things, but that little things, not much. The DACA allowed young undocumented people to come out of the shadows, work legally, like I said, and live without fear of deportation, which has changed a little bit. I don't know if you heard the news maybe a year ago, where some dreamers, well, we call it dreamers, even if they're DACA recipients, we keep calling them dreamers, were deported because immigration didn't go through all the paperwork to find out if they were documented or undocumented. So it helped, the dreamers help us to drive the economy, the growth of the economy, keep families together, promote education and community integration, and strengthen our civic ties. However, dreamers are still not provide pathway to citizenship under the DACA program. And since it was created through an executive order, the president after Obama had the authority to end it at any time. And just a fact for you guys, the majority of the dreamers are Latinos, but we have a lot of other dreamers. They are from Asia, Europe, the Caribbean, to say some Brazil, Dominican Republic, Tobago, Jamaica, India. Katie, can you pass to the next slide, please, so people can read it as I'm talking? Thank you. So the work permit needs to be renewed, as I said earlier, every 2 years, and it costs the fee is about $495. So that means that every dreamer, every 2 years, they have to renew the work permit and also to do all the paperwork for DACA. So something that I would like to share is the employers can ask a DACA recipient if they are dreamers or they are DACA recipients, but the recipients have the right to, they don't have to share that information. And when they apply for jobs, you will not see any difference than any other people they apply for a job. They don't have any specific something to say, I am a DACA. They just get a social security number and a work permit. And that security number stays forever. So they don't have to renew or get a new one every 2 years. That's the same one that they have for as long as they're DACA recipient. And even if they do not renew their paperwork, the social security number stays with them. Right now, the lives of, before that, I wanted to tell you, many of the DACA recipients are doctors, educators, lawyers, and so on. They are essential workers. You might see them working at the stores. They might be one of your employees. They might be one of your neighbors, or might be one of your co-workers. So right now, about 800,000 dreamers' lives are being debated at the Supreme Court. They will have a result early June, middle June. There are 3 scenarios that can happen. The Supreme Court will decide if the DACA program is unconstitutional and will be ended. So that means every DACA recipient will not be able to continue working legally in the United States. The second scenario is that the court concludes that it might review the administration's decisions to terminate DACA and rules that the termination is unlawful. That would be the dream of the dreamers, that they will continue to receive or renew their work permit and the DACA. And the last one would be that the court concludes that it might review the decision and it decides that the Trump administration is right. The termination of the DACA is lawful, so that they will end it. Okay, next slide, please. So it's time to stretch because we've been here sitting here for almost 20 minutes. So if everybody stands up and just stretch so you can be ready for the next part of our training. Also, I'm just gonna get up and do this. And also to remind yourself that working with families, they're immigrants and undocumented, you have to do that too. You have to stretch. Next slide, please, Katie. So many of you have heard this term ITIN. Many people refers to ITIN number, which stands for Individual Taxpayer Identification Number. This is a tax processing number the IRS issues to people who cannot get a social security number so that they can comply with the US tax laws. So what that means is we all in this country have to comply with the IRS. So we have to file taxes, and I would say a big percentage, 75, 80% of undocumented people file taxes because it's the law. The other ones that might not have file taxes is because they get cash. And so they cannot prove how much they make to file taxes. So one other thing that I would like to share with you is that we all pay taxes and we all contribute to this beautiful country. So when we go to the store and we buy something, and we get to pay taxes. So what I'm trying to say is undocumented people, they go to the store, they buy something, they pay taxes. They don't have a little card or ID that says, I'm undocumented, please don't tax me. So we all pay taxes, one way or the other. So the other thing I would like to share is that next time when you look at your paycheck, look at your pay stub and see all the deductions that you have on your pay and your paycheck, we all do the same. Undocumented people, if they're working, they get those deductions as well. So they are contributing also to the unemployment, labor and industry, whatever deduction we have. And it's a little unfair, I would say. I don't want to use that word, but I'm going to use it. It's unfair that right now people can apply for unemployment, and undocumented people, they have been paying tax on to get unemployment, they cannot get it. And I would like to share something else that right now is a group of people, they are behind the scenes working really hard to, they got together last week with the governor to ask to release some funds for the undocumented families. They're asking for a lot of money, but seems like a lot of money, but it's not enough to help all the families that are not getting any help through the unemployment. They're asking for $100 million to be distributed in different organizations to help families. They're in it right now. And the organization that's putting all this together is Wisen, and Maricela is typing the information in the chat. So it's a good place to go and get information regarding immigrants and undocumented families. I'm just gonna share something really quick also, that they meet every Thursday at 3 o'clock, and they have a phone call where you will learn way more than we're sharing here. Next slide, please. And this is my friend Maricela that's gonna talk about this.
Thank you, Fatima. So I just wanted to add a little bit about what Fatima says. They are launching a campaign. So if you wanna be part of the campaign, I will invite you to look at the website and see different ways that you can join. So now we have here a public charge. So public charge is not a new term. And I'm going to turn off my video just to see if I don't get cut off. Sorry about that. So public charge is not a new term. This is not a new policy. This has existed forever. And it depends on the judge criteria to consider the person as a public charge or not. The difference right now is that
that this administration has said it so loud that create a lot of fear in the community. So in the previous policy, public services that could cause an immigrant to be considered as a public charge were limited to cash assistance such as TANF, cash or benefits, or SSI. Long-term care such as being hospitalized through public insurance, and other personal factors such as age, health, income, and others are reviewed when deciding if an immigrant is likely to become a public charge or not. But that policy has changed and is expanded. And now it's included Medicaid except for emergency services and coverage of children under 21 years old, pregnant women, and new moms. It's SNAP, food stamps, or EBT, housing assistance such as Section 8. I'm sorry, I was reading the chat. Such as Section 8 housing vouchers or other federal policy housing programs. Cash assistance such as TANF and cash benefits or SSI. Long-term care such as being hospitalized through public insurance. Now, on the personal factors, besides the one that we mentioned before, that it was age, health, now income, now it's another skills, including English language skills. Another review with stricter standards when deciding if an immigrant is likely to become a public charge is, for example, immigrants under the age of 18 or over 61, those with lower incomes or poor credit scores, or many other factors can be considered as public charge. So as you can see, it's, and there is a term in the slide, but so in my community, I'm involved in my community. So every time right now with this crisis that we are sharing resources, the first thing that they ask is this going to be targeted as a public charge? So it's causing a lot of fear in the community. And so it's kind of sad how they don't want to apply for some resources just because of fear. Thank you, Katie. Next slide. Okay, so
Maricela and Fatima, before we go on, there's a question about how someone applies for an ITIN number. And so before we go on to this slide, can you guys answer that question?
Yeah, I'm typing so slow. I saw that, sorry. So how people apply for the number is when they file their taxes, they combine it. So the person that do their taxes, they're applying for the IT number at the same time. That's the only time they do it. And they also, the IT number, it had to be renewed every so often. I don't remember how often they have to renew it.
Okay, so
yeah.
if you are undocumented, you file your taxes and they give you a number, or do you?
Yeah.
They just give you a number. You just get a number that you didn't know about before.
Maricela, you
yes.
to answer that?
Yeah, and that number is given you by the IRS.
Okay.
And I will recommend to ask an accountant. And this is, don't go, a lot of people that do taxes are not professional. So my recommendation is to go directly with an accountant so they can provide you more information about it. But that number is given by the IRS.
So I guess my question about that is, so if you are if you're filing taxes and you're getting this ITIN number, does the government come after you because they know where you are because you filed these taxes with this special number?
We haven't seen.
I was gonna say, that's a funny question, Katie, because you would think that that would be something that would do, but not. They would not come after you or send that information to ICE or immigration.
They want their money.
They want their money, exactly.
Okay. All right, so Gloria Vett says, but if the person gets cash for the job they do and don't complete taxes, can they still apply for the number?
Can you repeat the question, Katie?
If they are getting paid under the table, essentially, if they're being paid cash and they don't do taxes, do they get the number?
So I think that I know a lot of people that work, let's see, under the table, but even though they pay taxes, so they do their taxes through a IT number. So even though they are paying under the table, I have heard that a lot of them, even though file taxes, they just file as self-employed and just receiving cash.
Uh-huh. So, so yeah, Gloria, that I think the number is coming from the IRS, so it absolutely is connected to filing your taxes. So if they don't do taxes, they're not going to get a number, but they should do taxes because they'll get in trouble later if they don't do the taxes.
And something that I would like to share too, that some people can use this number to maybe get to rent a house. Some people would take that as a, you know, a number to rent a house or to open a bank account.
Okay, and Alejandro has shared the how do I apply for an ITIN in the text in the chat. All right.
And also a lot just for running a credit score with the IT number, it sometimes is the way that it works. And one thing that I forgot to mention about the public charge is on all the benefits that I mentioned before, those benefits, so if you don't have a social security number, I mean, you cannot access those benefits. Those benefits are for the children of, and the children are citizen. So I forgot to mention that thing, I'm sorry. So now on this slide, we're seeing this graphic where it says Latino and Hispanic. And honestly, for me, that was a big surprise. And it took me a while to learn. Actually, I learned when I was working on this, why we are called Hispanic, why we are called Latino. So we are called Latino because we are from Latino America. We belong to Latino America. So, and we are being called Hispanic because we speak Spanish. So, and it says in the Latino that includes Brazil, but Brazil is not included in the Hispanic because Brazil, the language that they speak is Portuguese. And then Spain is not considered as a Latino because Spain is not in Latino America. So just understand a little bit when you ask your families, are you Latino, are you Hispanic? So just when we think about it, it's because we don't know. This is something that people, that the system here in the United States has put us in this position. Because I'm from Mexico, I am Mexican, and that's everything that I know. But not coming to this country, I need to figure out what do I am. If I'm Latino, if I'm Hispanic, and now we have this new term that is Latins. So Latins is to be more inclusive of all the people that are from Latino America.
Yeah,
Thank you.
In English, Maricela, I think everybody is saying that word Latinx.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's Latinx, not Latinx.
Yeah.
And I tell you something really quick. This is again what Maricela said. This is something that has been created in the United States. When I tell my family, do you know what Latinx? They live in Mexico. They go, what is that? They don't know.
Thank you. To the next slide, please. So now we have ICE, that stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and then the Border Patrol. So our community knows ICE as La Migra. And basically what they do is they do enforcement immigration law inside of the United States. And the Border Patrol do enforcement immigration law in all the border of the United States. Both of them have the authority to deport people. And it's and I heard someone yesterday that says, you know, that other administration has done also a lot of things, like President when it was the last administration of President Obama, we had a lot of deportation, and that is true. But the difference between in the past and with this new administration is how our administration it's highlighting all this level of hate that that has created. I have friends that are legal residents, also they are citizen, but just because the physical appearance, they have a lot of fear just being here. And just it was very remarkable for me when I have a friend sharing his experience. They went for a trip there near Canada. They were still in the United States territory. They were just having fun with his wife and their children next to the river. And suddenly the Border Patrol truck came close to them. And he said, you know, it was this feeling of anxious, because the officers look at us, and rapidly in my mind, I was thinking about, okay, if they approach us, I don't have anything besides my driver license. I'm not carrying my work permit. I'm not carrying my social security number. I'm not carrying anything that proves that I'm here. So they were just very afraid of if they approach them. He mentioned something like, oh, if something happens, then I'm going to be detained. What is going to happen to my wife? What is going to happen to my children? If both of us are detained, what is going to happen for my children? So everything was coming to him, and it was pretty sad how they feel right now. So I don't know if one of my fellows want to add something on here.
Yeah, when this administration came to be at the White House, it was a lot of fears in the undocumented families, at least in Centralia, and I can maybe say in the whole United States. People were not going out with their kids. They were staying home, limited the times that they were going to the store getting groceries. They were afraid to be deported and maybe have to leave their kids behind. We in Centralia did 2 nights where we have families coming into the library to do letters, notarized letters to prevent for their kids to be by themselves. What I'm trying to say is that people were afraid going to work and not come back home and having kids waiting for them because they got deported back to their home country. So they were signing letters saying, I want my friend Maricela to take care of my kids if I get deported. This letter was actually made by Northwest Immigration Project. And what we needed to do is just put the name of the family and saying, I'm allowed for this family to take care of my kids if I'm not present. And it was very sad because in 2 nights, we had 160 families coming in through the library to sign those letters. As I was helping, we got volunteers. We organized this quickly. One of our advocates in Centralia, she's a teacher and she cares for families. We organized these 2 nights and we were in tears every time because it's like preparing for the worst, and family were signing those letters. And Alejandro, are you here?
Yes, I am here. Hopefully everybody can hear me. If not, I do have a backup computer just in case my sound decides to give out on me or Zoom decides to kick me out. So one thing that I did want to mention on that part of ICE and Border Patrol is that I attended Western Washington University, and every time that I was there, almost on a weekly basis, I would see Border Patrol in the town of Bellingham. I understand that we are close, that town was close to the border, but I know that a lot of students had that fear of Border Patrol coming onto campus and asking people for their documentations to see if they or if they were allowed to be in this country. And one thing that a group there on campus actually moved and pushed the administration of the campus was to send out a letter to all the students on campus letting them know that that Border Patrol was allowed to go through the town, but they weren't allowed to actually enter onto campus.
Okay, thank you, Katie. If we can go to the next slide after the, yeah, the next one. Oh, no, the previous one, yeah. Okay. Okay, now we have some terms and topics to avoid. And this is just if you're working with families that that it seems like they are not from this country, just terms like alien or illegal. Not everyone that speaks Spanish is Mexican. A lot of people get very angry when you refer to them as an Mexican because they're not. Don't make assumptions like the previous statement. And also I want to mention here that just because they are from Latin America, they might speak Spanish. Don't stereotype. Don't believe that just Latinos are undocumented. Don't generalize. Not all American citizens speak English. And because they don't speak English, it doesn't mean that they are not well educated as well. Thank you, Katie.
Now, can everybody take a moment? Can you go back, Katie? Thank you. And do you remember when Maricela asked you to write a word, or Alejandro and Maricela, to write a word that made you feel less than others, made you feel inferior, or that might offend you? Can you please take a look at that word? And if you want to share it with us, we totally appreciate it. Maricela has her up. Can you say it out loud, Mari?
I'm sorry. Okay.
Her
So
voice.
mine is stupid because for me in Spanish, stupid is really a bad word. So it was very irritated for me when I heard my children saying that word, and they already know that here at home we don't use that because in Spanish it's very offensive. Thank you.
Does anybody else would like to share the word that makes them feel inferior or less than?
You can include that in the chat box if you want.
Hi, this is Lori, and I'm a Caucasian. And actually, the word that really bothers me is being referred to as Italian, even though that's my national origin. Because when I was growing up, to be an Italian American immigrant was something to be ashamed of, because that culture was seen as less than, less educated, you know, more rural, what have you. So I just bring that up so that people understand that even, you know, white bread American person, I still carry that.
Thank you, Lori. Anybody else? Beth said, I am a Latina and I don't like to be people say I can hear you. Anybody else?
So Monique, if everybody could see, she was on her screen, she was sharing the word that she wrote down was the word ugly. And I want to say thank you to everybody that has shared. It wasn't required to share, but we want to thank you guys for your guys' sharing.
Somebody, and it's so true, that's what we say, you know, everybody who speaks Spanish is Mexican. So somebody said, I don't like it when they call me Mexican, I'm Puerto Rican, and we have to honor that. I'm gonna share mine that bothered me when I moved. I'm 20 years ago, somebody told me that I was a person of color. And it was offensive to me because I never heard that before. I didn't know that I was a person of color. But now, well, in the beginning, I felt that I was being segregated to another group that I didn't know that I belonged to. But now I know that I do. So I guess sometimes you get used to do the things that bothers you, and I don't know if it's okay or not. But now that I know who I am, and now that I know more than before, it doesn't bother me anymore. I'm gonna read the chat. Alejandro, can you read the chat?
Yes, so we got a couple other responses in the chat. So one of them is from Rosie. She wrote, I remember being called fat when I was young. I carry that definition still with me. And then from Molly, my mother-in-law calls me gringa rica, even though I am mixed race. And then the one above it is from Grace, which is, I don't have a term for this, but it saddens me when I hear and see dark-skinned people or people of different origins not treat each other respectfully. And then Tegan, I think, and I apologize if I butchered that name. I am from Ethiopia, which is located in Africa, and I am and I have an accent, but it doesn't mean I am not educated. And like I mentioned, I want to thank everybody for sharing all the words that you guys wrote down on your piece of paper and the meaning it has to you.
And I just want to mention that somebody wrote something that it means a lot, because it was something that was said to her when she was young, and it's still, she is still carrying that until today's day.
And then one last comment before I guess we move on, from Glory Vet. She wrote, in a store, a cashier asked me if I want plastic or paper, and the other person next to her said, don't ask her because she don't know English. I answered, yes, I do speak English and I know what you are saying. Just because I look Hispanic, they just think everyone doesn't speak English.
So true.
Okay. And that is one of the things that we mentioned, right? In our topics to avoid. So thank you so much for sharing. So, and you can continue to share in the chat box. Okay, Katie, can you go to the next one, please? How to support immigrant families. Be inclusive, not just invite, but rather include them. So a lot of times it's the intention versus impact, right? People want to have a really good intention about making people feel inclusive and just not all Spanish-speaking families eat tacos, right? So, and not all Mexican eat tacos. Not all Mexican likes pepper. So I will invite you all to think about it when you are doing something. I mean, Head Start and ECAP works very great, do awesome things when they do a cultural event. They invite people to bring, to share. And that is so neat. So that's when we said include them, right? When you are inviting them.
Maria, I just gonna add something here. So that also means when you're inviting them and sending an invitation in the home language, also provide the interpretation. Otherwise, you're just inviting them, but you are not including them.
And we feel that a lot of times, like institutions are just checking the box, right? So don't make us feel that institution don't make us feel that we are just part of checking the box. So that's why we are mentioning this. Provide families handouts in their native tongue. Their native tongue means in their native language, in their mother language, because we have a very unique way, right, to when providing resources to them. Also, if we know that we are sending them to a place where they don't speak their own language, so just be next to them and help them if they need support. And also find out organization that serves people regardless of the status. So just, I know that it means a little bit of more work from your side, but it's just providing better services to the family. And remember that every community is different and every family is unique. And also, I mean, I know that Head Start and ECAP works a lot on making and building that relationship, right? So just be empathetic and be just for a little bit wear the shoes of the families that you are serving and think about it. How will you feel, right? If you are treated in that way. Thank you. Next slide, please. How to support staff that works with non-English speaking families. Just understand the culture and work style. And it's, again, building a little bit of more relationship with them. Trust their judgment. We all have different styles. Provide professional development specific for interpreting and translators. This is really important because a lot of times there is a fine line that we don't want to cross. So it doesn't have to be, a lot of times we provide a lot of professional development for other areas, but we forgot about our interpreters and translators. Don't assume that because they're bilingual, they are capable to translate or to do different kinds of interpretation. That is a skill that not everyone has. And there's different ways of interpretation. One of my hats that I wear as well is doing interpretation. And honestly, I can do better with simultaneous than with consecutive. And simultaneous is when the people speak at the same time, and consecutive is when the people do speak a phrase, and then the other person wait until the person finished to interpret. So we just, not everyone is capable, and there can be a lot of miscommunication if the person is not capable to do translation or interpretation. Value them, because a lot of families, they do family support duties, but added to that, they do translation, they do interpretation. They are there to hear the families and all the issues that the families are going through. Thank you.
Can I add something else? One of the things about the professional development is if there are not any classes or trainings out there, find a person that has experience with that and send your staff to them to get extra help. I have my own mentors on this. Maricela is one of them when it comes to simultaneous interpretation, because for me, it's really hard. It's a skill that I've been learning and I'm still learning. And so just partner up with other translators, interpreters, so they can get better at what they're doing. And this list may be short for the ones that are listening and they are one of the bilingual staff saying, whoa, I do more than that, and it's so true. But this is the ones that we felt that were some of the ones that we feel there was things to talk about it. And we don't want to diminish anyone who is bilingual, but also to be realistic about it, because many of us have a formal education in Spanish, and many of us do not. Many of us grew up here, and then our Spanish is, we learn it at home informally. So, or when we write it, maybe it's not as good as should be. And also, as many sizes that you can get to use your staff with translations. And again, reach out to other people that are doing this kind of work to get better at what you are doing already.
Okay, now I'm going to pass it to Fatima for the last part of our presentation.
So everything that we have done today is concluding this culture of humility. And I'm just gonna read it and add a little bit to it. Culture of humility is a humble and respectful attitude towards individuals and other cultures. Sense of equality, equity, kind of respect that we are driving forward. And the principles of cultural humility is love, compassion, receive, opening, essence, you, me. With that said, is that we don't have to be experts in culture, but we have to be humble enough to be able to share our own story, other people's stories, to come to be one story. So it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about us. We always have to think about, why is it about that person in front of me that make them special or unique, instead of thinking why so irritating the stuff that they do. Like Maricela mentioned before, you need to build a relationship with families and be open to what they have to share. And everybody has culture, not just people that come from another country. I have my own culture, my home culture, and I'm gonna tell you that a real good example of this, being humble. One organization called me one day because in Centralia, our population is changing and growing. So we have families from Guatemala, they're indigenous, and they have their own culture and their own way to do stuff. So this organization called me thinking Fatima is Hispanic or Latino, she should know about this. No, I didn't, because I'm not an expert and never would be about culture, but why I offer is to reach out to the family, because I've been working with them and I had a relationship, so I can ask and clarify what they needed from this family. And cultural humility is to be a lifelong learner, not to be an expert, but rather to be humble. With that, we have 2 videos, but they're a little too long. The first one, we showed it a little bit, so you can see just like 5 minutes if we have time. Alejandro has the part, but I don't know if he can share his screen anymore. If not, we invite you to.
You wanna, is it this, so which one do you wanna show, the first one?
Yeah, but we showed it, we picked just the part that was like 5 minutes. and Alejandro has it because it's 17 minutes long.
Okay.
And
So Alejandro, are you prepared to do that?
Yes, so I have it actually open on my end.
Okay,
And
hold on, let
hopefully
me-
right now when I share my screen, hopefully
Yep.
it works. I before we do show it, like Katie mentioned, this PowerPoint and the links that we shared will be available to everybody that registered for this training. So we will get it sent out just because I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. But for those that are able to stay, I will share my screen and I hope you guys enjoy the video. So let me share that screen. Share. Oh, will you give me access, Katie, so I can share?
Oh, sorry. I
No,
forgot.
you're fine.
You went out and back in. All right. You should be able to.
All right. Okay.
Are you sharing?
Yes.
In the
I'm
meanwhile, I just wanted to say that each one of the images on the slide has a meaning. I hope you may figure out what it means. For us, it meant each slide meant something different and it was related to the theme. Are we ready? Oh yeah.
yes. So I just have to let it load because since my computer decided to shut down on me. Hopefully I can get past this ad and then we will be able to see it.
Out and see what we got inside. This thing is solid. It's got nice grips on this.
You just click the skip.
There. Okay.
They were used to white Americans speaking their language. But I think I may have been the first Black person they ever saw speak Chinese. As a cultural diversity trainer, I have learned that this was truly one of my greatest cultural humility experiences. I didn't know then what I know now, but I had been spending about 2 years yielding who I was as a Black person, American, and native English speaker to learn and appreciate the culture, history, and language of China. I wanted so desperately to be a part and to be immersed in this wonderful culture. And so we have this concept that I realized that was really the pinnacle moment for me. The kitchen staff or the restaurant staff was impressed, perhaps even honored, that we as outsiders had learned their language. And I was trying so desperately to get it right. I wanted to pay honor to the country and the culture and the language that I had become so fond of. And so this type of cultural surrender and the increasing multicultural diversity in our society, I believe, is the foundation that led Drs. Melanie Turveloin and Jan Murray Garcia to develop the concept of cultural humility in 1998. These physicians were looking to develop a concept and a model that would be an extension or go beyond the limitations of cultural competency, but yet create a cultural framework that would help them to better serve their patients. Essentially, they realized they're the experts in medicine, but not the experts in culture of their patients. Yet they understood fundamentally that culture weighs heavily in someone's thoughts, their beliefs, their habits, and the choices that they will make for their life. You see, cultural competency is learned knowledge and also skill set that you need to manage cross-cultural relationships. But it actually can have some shortcomings and cause prejudice because the focus is heavily on what you learn and not necessarily looking at and evaluating your own personal experiences. Thus, cultural humility was created to be a process-oriented approach that takes into consideration who you are, your experiences, how you live the world, how you view the world through your own identities. Let's take me for an example this evening. I see the world through my lens of being a Black woman who's Christian, middle class, and heterosexual, to name a few. As a cultural diversity trainer, I've used the concept of cultural competency for many, many years. But I see cultural humility as an evolution of that work. Not to say that cultural competency is bad, but just that now we've taken it another step. And so what we've done is have that focus on who we are and then also being able to value what others bring to the proverbial table. And so let's evaluate these two schools of thought tonight. Cultural competency suggests that learning is finite, which means I can take a course, I can take a workshop, and learn about a group of people. So you may have someone say, hey, I understand Mexican Americans and their culture. Prior to my teaching in Houston, Texas, I took a cultural diversity workshop. Whereas cultural humility says that learning is infinite. We are lifelong learners who must critically self-evaluate. We must look at who we are, what we believe, and why based on our own experiences. And so I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to do a follow-up training to an organization I had worked with previously, actually right here in Westchester. And at these day-long retreats, we normally have food, nice little potluck, everybody brings something. And so there was a gentleman who brought a dish, which I fell in love with. I think I probably had 2 plates anyway. So, and what happened, I saw him and I said, hey, did your wife make that dish that she made the last time? Y'all already know, see? He said, my wife didn't make that, I did. And I thought, oh my goodness, how have I slipped into this gender norm? I immediately apologized. And then I used it as a teachable moment for our training session. But this is why it is so important to critically reflect and constantly self-evaluate. Even for me as a trainer, what happened, I was so influenced by social norms that I slipped right into one myself, even when I know what is culturally inappropriate. Number 2, cultural competency says that is concerned with book and learned knowledge, and that has power, which would mean that my certification as a diversity trainer takes precedence over my entire life experience of working with diverse cultures. Cultural humility, on the other hand, seeks to fix and challenge those power imbalances, recognizing, yes, who you are, but that we have to see everyone as a complex, multidimensional being who brings to the table their experiences, their culture, and their heritage. And this is demonstrated in the formation of a pearl. So you have a little granule of sand who loses its way from its friends, ends up slipping into an oyster. It's all of a sudden afraid and scared.
Okay, we'll finish that. And the invitation for everyone is to go back, honor who you are, be proud who you are, but as well do it with others. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming, and we hope to see you again around the WhatsApp Zoom meetings.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us as well.
Yes, appreciate you guys. Really glad that you came. And we will send out the PowerPoint and the link to the recording if you want to share. So thank you guys.
Gracias.
Bye. Gracias a todos. Thank you, Katie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
You too. Thank you.